and then your guys' video is up on there too. What? And yes, Kongiganek has wind turbines, and we have a couple of videos of Kongiganek. That community has local hires that go around and work on the wind turbines, so it's a pretty successful project that they have down there. And so, I guess, do you want to kick off the talk or just go?
Go for it.
Okay. All right, well, I wanted to thank everyone for coming. The purpose of this talk is to talk about renewable energy in rural Alaska and a little bit about who we are. My name is Jen Schmidt. I work at UAA at the Institute for Social and Economic Research. My background is actually as a wildlife biologist, but I do a lot of human dimensions research, which means basically anything where humans interact with the environment, I'm studying it. So it could be how climate change is affecting commercial fishing out in the Aleutian Islands. I've done interviews out there, to looking at wildfire risks around Anchorage and Fairbanks. So I've done some work with modeling moose hunting and success. What does it take to be a successful moose hunter? And this is Amanda. She's a graduate, or sorry, Barbara. It's been a long day. Barbara, she works up at UAF as a graduate student, and your background is supposed to be water, right?
Water economics, yeah. I'm an economist by training.
Mm-hmm. So we forgive her. But that's her getting water out of the river nearby Igiagig, one of our communities, and that's a common source of water for people in that community. They actually prefer it to the city water, which has a lot of chlorine in it. And also the city water doesn't reach a lot of the households within the community. So, and I mean, I interview people who harvest thousands of salmon from that river too, every year. So it's a very important river. So the goals of this presentation are, I'm trying to have a conversation with the communities that I go to about renewable energy. So I work with engineers at ASEP, so they're the actual real smart ones. I'm not an engineer, so if I get my terminology wrong, forgive me. But what I do is I interact with people and I try to bring back your guys' ideas to them so that they can build stuff and model stuff that works for rural Alaska. Instead of people from other countries down below coming in and saying, here, use this, and it doesn't work for rural Alaska. I mean, there's special conditions. So we're trying to change that philosophy, the way it's done. And in order to do this, I kind of need to interact with you guys and hear your ideas. And Barbara is going to be our lovely note taker for the evening, and we'll type these up and bring them back. So basically, we want to kind of cover is, do you guys want to see more renewable energy here in Cordova? Yeah? Because in a lot of places in Alaska, renewable energy has gone in and it doesn't help people whatsoever. I'm thinking of places out on the coast that have put in some wind turbines, and people do not see a reduction in their energy bill at all. There's various reasons for that. One of them is, rural Alaska has these things called microgrids. Does anyone know what a microgrid is? Cordova, and what makes it a microgrid?
We are a generation, distribution, and transmission facility. We don't get our electricity from anywhere else.
Yep, you're not connected to a giant power line that's going off to Anchorage, so it's all self-contained, which really does make it a nice system to try and model and figure out. But it's also a kind of a fragile system, because if you dump too much renewable energy in there, like they've done in Igiagig sometimes, you fry treadmills and all sorts of other interesting stuff happens. So you've got to be able to balance that power. And each of the places, typically has their power plant, which usually has a base operating cost. So they've got to make so much. So sometimes if you bring in, say, wind projects, either they can't be dumped onto the grid because it's just too much, nobody benefits, or, the economics of it, they still have to charge the customers the same amount of money to cover their operating costs. So there really isn't a win. But it sounds like here you guys actually save money from hydro. Everyone agree with that? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, and then we're going to talk about what kind of renewable energy do you want, and how do you want to use it. One of the things that's come up as a limitation of renewable energy in rural Alaska is the lack of education. People just don't know what's out there. And so I'm going to show you some different things that I've come across, and you can say, yes, I want that. No, that's a dumb idea. So I heard lots of yeses for more renewable energy. Any no's? All right, how many people do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 people. All right, 20 people want renewable energy. Okay, so in thinking about the ways that renewable energy can be used, I see two main ways. You can either have it on an individual house, such as powering water heaters in your house, hot water heaters, powering the lights in your house, or you can have it at the community level, such as solar panels on the washateria, or you have hydro here, which is distributed across all the households. So when you think about the community level versus the household level, who would vote for having more renewable energy in Cordova on the household level rather than the community level? If you had to choose between one or the other. We got one. Anyone else like to see it on your houses?
Are you saying where the power would be used or where it would be generated?
Where it would be generated. So say, would you rather see a solar farm for the community, or would you guys rather have solar, say, on your individual houses?
Solar farm, I would say.
Yeah, because logically, it would be nice if we could have every house just stand alone, independent on whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
But logically, that's not feasible for many, many reasons.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Certainly with solar, there's a lot of places in town that are in the shade mostly.
Okay, yeah, the mountains and everything. Okay. So, I mean, these are all good. It shows that I haven't lost you in your thinking. Okay. So, it's a difficult decision. I mean, I guess based on that, I mean, how many would want to see it at the community level? Think it would work better at the community level? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17? So 17. Okay. So it sounds like community level is popular, but if it could work on individual households, that might be also a way to go. It's interesting when I look for pictures, there's not too many on individual houses, which is telling. And there are reasons for that. So some examples of the types of renewable energy options that are out there. And if you have questions, feel free to shout them out at me. Solar, so that's been mentioned. This is a picture of one of the largest solar farm in Alaska. It was put in outside of Willow. It dumps onto the grid. The power generated is distributed to many, many households. On the other side is an example of Igiagig, where I was. Anyone know where Igiagig is? Yeah? Where is it?
Head of the Queequeg River.
Yep. So it's kind of out where they want to put the Pebble Mine area. Yeah. And so this, who knows what that is?
Individual house solar.
What kind of solar?
Water loop one.
Yeah, it does connect to a water loop. These are solar tubes. And solar tubes, and I meant to look it up, but Clay was there for me today. Solar tubes more produce heat rather than the solar panels, which produce electricity. So these solar tubes are fed into water pipes that this house has running through the floor. So I know over in Europe it's really popular to kind of have the radiant heat in the floors. So that's what they do here, and they also heat up the hot water for their house. People don't realize how much energy it takes to heat up hot water. So this is a really way to heat up that water and just store hot water. One thing that they found out is they can get really hot and they burnt the glycol that's in this system. So, they have the little panels that they can bring down and kind of temper down that temperature. The other thing that I learned from visiting this community is you notice they're not on the roof. Why aren't they on the roof?
Snow.
Wind can whip them off, snow. Yep.
They need to be at a steeper angle than in places farther south.
It could be. These are on like the south-facing sides of the building, so that may be a reason. But I've worked as a roofer in the past, and it's tricky getting up on roofs and trying to maneuver around. So it's just easier to clear snow and deal with these, fix them when they're on the side of a building or on these kind of tent structures that they have set up. They prefer to go with this. The other thing, too, is I mentioned this to the community of Kongiganak. Anyone know where Kongiganak is?
So hilly on the lake.
Oh, you're right.
I think it's out by the Bethel area.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a community of 700, and they do not have any piped water there, and they have 3 washing machines for 700 people. So they definitely have some comments about water. And they tried to get water there, but the engineers kind of messed up the plans, and they didn't calculate the grade quite right, and it wasn't sustainable, so solids would not kind of flow the way they're supposed to flow in the system. So people thought they were going to get water, but now they're not. They're still waiting. But that's just another community that I went to. And I forgot where I was going with that, but I was going to say something about it. I'm sure it'll pop up later. So here's an example of kind of the solar potential here in Alaska, and you can see that this is actually the grid size. The scale is quite blocky on this. But since I ran into people last night who are not from the United States, I thought I would compare it to, say, Germany, the solar potential of Germany. And, Alaska does have quite a bit of solar potential. And especially now, UAF is kind of working on these bifacial solar panels so that they can get albedo reflecting off the snow. So people might think, oh, we have no light in the winter, but actually there's quite a bit of light that comes off of the snow. And then, this is the concept that I was kind of trying to get at earlier about, it would be great, let's just throw solar panels on people's houses. In Kotzebue, I suggested this idea. This is where I was going with this. And the power plant person was like, no, do not do that. Because the way that they have their grid set up, it would create such an imbalance in the different phases of their grid that it would just throw everything into chaos. So he definitely did not want to see that. And this is an example of where this house has all of these solar panels. They're not really having to pay much money to the power plant anymore, but those costs get passed on to the other households that are on that microgrid. And the energy imbalance. What he would rather see for Kotzebue is some type of solar farm out there. And even though their wind works great, he really would like to see an alternative renewable energy source out there. And so here's Kotzebue, Kong for short. This is one of the 5 wind towers that they have out there. This is one of the leading systems in the world. It's really amazing what they've been able to do out there. You guys and Kong really have strong leaders in your community, along with Igiagig. Igiagig's really strong too, and it just shows in the communities. People are bringing in these novel technologies and trying to make things work, and really improving the quality of life for residents. So here they have these wind turbines, and one of the big issues with renewable energy in rural Alaska is storage. They do have the batteries, just like you guys. Huh? Consistency. These do kind of go down quite frequently, but you'll see the little tiny dots there. What are those? Up there. People. Having skilled labor to work on these systems is a big thing. And what this area has done is it's a group of 5 communities, and they've formed a wind group, and they train local people, and they rotate throughout the communities to fix these systems when they go down. So we were out there with a drone, and we took some footage of these guys up there fixing the wind turbine. So that's one of the ways that they make this work. The other thing that they mentioned by this is when you have trainings, people learn differently. Alaska Native people learn in a different manner, typically. And so they can kind of interpret what's being taught in the class and spread it among people in the class so that people understand it in a different way. And it really helps absorb the material. And these wind turbines take dispatchable loads and turn them into heat. Who knows what dispatchable loads are?
Something you can use right away.
Extra energy.
Extra energy, yep. So when the wind is blowing really, really hard, instead of stopping these and saying we can't take any more power and throwing it all away, or in your case with the hydro, dumping the water and not using it to generate energy, you can use that dispatchable load and put it into a battery or heat people's houses. These thermal stoves are kind of like Toyo stoves, but when the wind blows hard and 5 of these are running, people's houses get heated. Some people have saved 50% of their heating fuel And so they save a lot of money and can go out and do more subsistence activities, or Netflix or something.
How does that work with the,
Each of the households kind of has a little electrical cord that runs into the homes, and it heats up kind of blocks that are within this thermal stove, and heat comes out of them. So that's my non-engineering explanation of that.
how many megawatts is the wind generator there? Like half a megawatt? It doesn't look that big to me.
I can look it up. They are huge. They are very, very big.
Well, compared to Fire Island wind generators, those must be 1 or 2 megawatts at least.
They're not much. They're
How
not
long
much
are the blades
smaller.
on there? They're not that big.
Well, those are people, and those people are about 6 feet tall.
Yeah, they're not very big.
So
Not very big. It's
I
probably
can
half-
look it up afterwards.
It's probably half a megawatt.
They do have 5 of them. The funny thing was with climate change, they kind of got us machine stuck trying to get across the tundra to get it out there because things weren't frozen up very well. Even with the best trained workforce, getting parts in when things break down is still an issue. A lot of these parts come from Germany, which is, one of the issues with a lot of this renewable energy technology. So residents were very frustrated when I was there because it's been a cold winter. And the coldest winter in a long time for residents there, and thermal stoves were not producing any heat at all. And that's because one of these wind turbines was down. And so you didn't have enough excess energy being generated because the power plant wants to feed itself first. And so the thermal stoves weren't turning on. And so they kind of have a little PR problem going there with that. The other thing, kind of the importance of education is there is a fee on your electricity bill for these thermal stoves. So people will look at their electrical bill and be like, I am not saving any money. I'm actually paying more. But they're not looking at how much fuel they're saving and doing the math and looking at, hey, I saved $200 on fuel and I was charged an extra $25 for my thermal stove. So, it's again getting the education out there to the public. Iggyogig has decided to go with these smaller wind turbines. Any ideas why they went with the smaller ones?
Because the big ones will blow away.
The big ones could blow away. These can be put on a regular plane that flies into this small village. So they don't have to depend on barges. The barges have become unpredictable in that area. And if that barge does not sail before the end of the fall, they have to pay for winter storage for whatever didn't make it. So if they're trying to get stuff in and say the wind turbine doesn't make it, they got to pay that whole winter to store it. These are small, they can get in. Also 2 people can raise them up and lower them down, so if they need to be fixed. And these just dump onto the grid.
So these are like 10 kilowatt ones, probably.
I think they're even smaller than that.
Really?
Yeah, they're pretty small. But anything, when you add to the grid kind of helps. This community also has some greenhouses. They're playing with the vertical wind turbines there too. It's another university that's doing some research there in town, but I don't think it's going so well with those. They're still trying to work with it. But it brings up this idea, this community is really trying all of these different renewable energy. And they want to see it changed, how renewable energy is done in rural Alaska. They would rather see the grid infrastructure updated first, and then the renewable energies come in. Because they have so much renewable energy power right now, their grid system can't really handle it. Like with their brand new rib gen that I'll get to, they can't use all the power that's produced. And this community has 70 people, so it's a pretty small community. And here's just kind of the potential wind generation for the state of Alaska. So you can see out by the Bethel area, quite a bit of wind power out there. Kotzebue is another area where there's quite a few wind turbines out there. Cordova, I've been told, has a class of 4, and that is not so good. It means that the wind blows way too hard, or the wind doesn't blow enough. So, yeah, you're kind of in that little bad spot.
I can vouch for that.
All right. Someone said there was a wind turbine near here, but it just kind of got shredded.
Well, I had one, I live on the coast, 8 miles out this way. So I had a 1 kilowatt version from Bergie, and the blades flex too much and actually hit the tower. This is at the top of the knife, but screws
Uh-huh.
So that's a, I have one big solar panel, it's, 2.5 by 5 feet, 137 watt.
Mm-hmm.
I have these huge 2-volt batteries that weigh 235 pounds each.
Holy cow.
So I have 6 of those on my deck.
Uh-huh.
If I can get 3 hours of sunlight every 3 weeks, which is quite possible around here,
Mm-hmm.
I can run the batteries, keep them charged up to run a string of cool white Christmas lights. LED lights, 16 feet
Mhm.
long. That's all I need for the cabin.
Nice.
Very simple.
Uh-huh. Yeah, very self-reliant.
Right.
Okay. Hydro, is another form of renewable energy. You guys are all familiar with that. Here's a map of what the hydroelectric potential looks like for the state of Alaska. You can see, it's all over the state of Alaska. It's one of the things that can be utilized by many, many communities. Some people have asked me about wave action, and you can see they tried to look at wave action, tidal power, and there is some potential there, but the technology just really isn't there. I would say it's about 20 years behind of what solar is. That's what I've been told. So they're still trying to work at it, but I wouldn't expect anything anytime soon. Not being an engineer, one of my thoughts would be there's so much glacial silt in the water, it might be hard to get something like that to work. So this is the in-river generation. This is the only one in the state of Alaska. This is actually half owned by the community and half owned by the business that's putting this in. So they're really invested to see this thing work. And if it works, they want to expand it in Alaska. Basically, this thing gets sunk to the bottom of the river. And I was really surprised at how strong this river is there. It's booking. And it gets sunk, and those foils kind of spin around. And since this is the first one of its kind, there's been some snafus. It's been really cold this winter, and frazzle ice started to form. And suddenly they looked out, and they're like, what's that sticking up out of the water? And it was this. It's supposed to be stuck to the bottom of the river. Fortunately, it formed up, and it went back down, and they didn't have to deal with that. The other thing is these foils kind of got damaged, and so the engineers on site had to repair them and figure out a new design. But so far it seems to be working pretty well. They're thinking of putting a second one parallel in line. I don't know what they're going to do with all that energy.
How big is that thing?
How what?
How big is that?
It's pretty big. They have, this kind of
You can see
shows
the people there.
the people next to it. I meant to put another picture here, but got distracted. But yeah, it had a huge kind of fishing boat that was pushing it out and guiding it to where it needed to go. But yeah.
Any idea what the megawatt production is on that? It's got to be probably half a megawatt or maybe a quarter megawatt.
It's a lot. If you give me your email, I could send you the specs and information on it. This area has lots of lodges around it too, so maybe eventually it could help power some of the sport fishing lodges that are there.
So, my understanding was this summer they were doing some looking at what the effects were on the fish.
Mm-hmm.
Any updates on that then, or?
So they're still doing it right now, actually. So they have a camera and one of the problems is, so they have a camera currently that's working, and so they have to take a picture like every so often. So right now they didn't seem to be a significant impact, but they're still in the process of collecting more information. So I guess.
Yeah, and they put the electronics equipment in a Connex outside with no heat. So they can't really see anything right now because it's too cold for the computer screens to go on. So in theory, the camera is taking pictures, of what's going on down there, but until it warms up, they can't really see what's going on. But they have weekly meetings with this company to kind of check in and see what the specs are, how things are going. Is a really good communication. Biomass is another one that I mentioned. Tanana is the community that has biomass. They're in interior Alaska, surrounded by, the boreal forest. People there, 98% of the households heat with wood. So people like wood, are used to going out and harvesting wood. They have 11 of these in the community, and it's only 250 people. I think they kind of have too many of these, and they don't really help the people. These are used to heat the city and tribal buildings, so like the school, the washateria, so indirectly the washateria helps people, where the teachers live, things like that. The way that they do benefit people is that locals are hired to harvest wood. So there's not very many jobs in Tanana, and this is a way to earn some money. So, and I've done some interviews there with people, and it really overlaps nicely with subsistence. If you're out going, berry picking or something, throw some wood on your snow machine. If you go upriver to get fish and you get skunked, fill your boat full of wood, float back down. So it's a nice overlap. One word of caution is none of these are running right now. They had a deal with the state of Alaska. Recently, a road was built out to across the Yukon, across from Tanana, and wood was pushed from the end of the road to nearby Tanana, and that wood was supposed to last about 3 years to power these, and it was a really cheap, easy source of wood. People just got in their boat or snow machine in the winter, went over, got some wood, brought it back. All that wood is gone now, and they did not have enough time to develop a sustainable plan to harvest wood. So they do have an island where they have a woodlot, but they do not have permission from the corporation to cross that land to get their wood. Some other issues that are arising is it's labor intensive, and it's difficult to try to find people, to hire people to do that type of work, especially when they could do something and make a lot more money, Yeah, they're not running at this point. These two, just like, with any other renewable energy, I mentioned you got to have a skilled workforce. There's quite a bit of turnover in Tanana. And these biomass boilers, they have to be kept really, really hot. You can't smolder a fire in them. And you also have to watch the water that's around them. You got to look at the pH, the chemicals in the water. They didn't really do that, and a fire occurred in one of them. So again, it's keeping that trained workforce, and with the high turnover, someone's got to be out there doing training quite frequently to keep people up on this. So it's a challenge. But as you can see, interior Alaska has a lot of potential for biomass. It can also kind of be coupled in some areas to reduce wildfire risk. Yeah.
How is the one working out in Ketchikan, that big biomass plant there?
I'm not sure. Amanda Bird would probably be the person. She's the biomass coordinator. But it seems like the ones down here in Southeast are working quite well. And also, Tanana, they have a greenhouse. They're trying to hook up their biomass to a greenhouse there. They didn't really read the fine print of some of the funding that they got, and so they're trying to deal with that issue to get their greenhouse up and running. But where it seems down in Southeast, they've been able to couple it with some greenhouses quite nicely down here. So down here it seems to be rather successful.
What about toke?
Toke? Toke works well. They have a few different types of biomass there. They have some of the pelt systems where rather than just throwing in like cordwood that you saw, you put in pelts. They've done a lot of fuel treatments there, so clearing fuel breaks, fire breaks around the community, but it seems to be going well there. It's also a larger community on the road system. People have vehicles to go out and harvest wood. Yeah.
Is it just for the school they have that, or?
No, I believe they have it on a few different things in town. Yeah. Yeah, I think like maybe what is it, kind of like a nursing home has it too. Geothermal is also something that's talked about in Alaska. It's not all that popular. Iceland has done it really, really successfully, coupling this geothermal to grow food there. We're not really here yet in Alaska. Clay did mention that geothermal could also be, harvesting using the water from the ocean and the heat from the water in the ocean to heat things like sidewalks, which is what they do in Norway. I lived in Norway for a while, and they actually run tubes in the sidewalks there to help thaw the ice. They have a really warm Gulf Stream that comes up there. But just not a whole lot here. Has anyone been to Chena Hot Springs? Yeah, okay. That's one of the successful geothermal operations in town. And there is, especially along the Aleutian Islands, some potential there for geothermal. Okay, so now you have to choose. So, if you could pick one type that you'd want to see in Cordova, what would it be? How about you?
Pretty much has to be hydro.
Hydro, okay.
Well, we're already hydroed out from what I can tell, so I'd say solar.
Solar, okay.
Wind?
Wind, all right. Back there,
Solar.
solar,
Solar if it's connected.
okay.
I mean, with solar and wind, you probably want to do a combination of the two, since on day, instead of having large battery banks, you could, because on days where you're producing a lot of solar, likelihood is you're not going to be producing a lot of wind. When you're producing a lot of wind, you're not going to be producing a lot of solar. So.
Yeah, an exception there is clear weather in January and February.
Yeah. Yeah.
Blowing, but yeah, basically sunny.
Okay. You probably have to be on top of the wind to make sure it's clamped down when it gets too windy. Yeah.
I would like to see them do something with, tidal power.
Tidal power.
We've got over at Spike Island, when the tide changes, it's going at 6 knots.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I wonder if maybe something like the RivGen could be a tidal generator or something like that. Okay. All right. How about in the back row there? How about you? What would you vote for?
I was thinking either the in-river power generation, but I'm also really curious about the tidal energy.
Okay. 0.5. Split, you?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay. Solar? All right, hiding in the back? Solar? Would you agree? Yeah.
So, yeah, we've all looked at this quite extensively over the years. In this community and individually, we've got a lot of brain power in here. I would love to see something like geothermal, but I don't know that Cordova has that ability, in Cordova particularly, to do something like geothermal, but like map, no. Right. But so we've looked at what we can realistically do. We're taking small bites off it. So we've got the hydro part, and now we're looking at the next logical things of wind and solar, combinations of those. I would love to see some tidal too, but again, I'm not so sure that the technology's quite there yet. We are so close. River power isn't going to work on our rivers for when we have to transmit the power probably too far from where it's generated. And then we've got so much debris coming down those rivers, so much silt. But this tide does crank out here, and if we could get on top of that technology and get something just right off the harbor, that would be super beneficial.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there's a German company that they did those inline river generators, and they're doing some experimentation
In the marine environment?
Yeah, in the Scotland.
Okay, maybe
It's
write
got a
that
whole
down
other
to look into
plethora
it.
of challenges once you've got freshwater in the marine.
Yeah, I think they've been doing it for about 3 years, so it's not really ready yet. But.
And we'll touch on this later, but there is all these startups, and what do they do when you put something in and 5 years later they're gone? That's kind of something that communities struggle with too. Yep. Okay. All right. So back row.
Solar or hydro.
Solar or hydro. Okay.
Solar, yeah.
Solar. All right. You said both solar and wind. Okay.
I like the idea of tidal because there's so much power and it is close to the grid.
Okay. Solar.
Tidal.
Tidal.
Hard to tell. I'd love to say solar, but we're in Cordova and I'm a little skeptical. I've been really looking at that RivGen and the tidal. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the community has been really nice at sharing data with us, just like Cordova's been great at sharing data. So that really helps our engineers and modelers to try and figure out if things do work. One community in Norway, they actually put up a reflective kind of like mirror up on one of the ridge tops around the community to try to point light down into their community. It was in an effort to make people happier, because sunshine makes people happy. Like, that's so Norwegian.
But if you had solar panels with mirrors on either side and the bottom,
There you go.
that would help a lot.
Uh-huh. What would you like to see?
I'd like to see tidal developed.
Tidal? Okay.
Tidal.
Okay, Tidal's very popular. Okay, cool. All right, so some examples of how renewable energy then could be used. So then it's trying to match up this, say tidal, and what could we use tidal for? I don't have a lot of examples of tidal on here because that wasn't on my mind, but now it should be. But the examples of solar houses, and you notice before I went to Igiugig, I couldn't find a single picture of rural Alaska with solar on the house. One of the issues is HUD houses and ownership of houses. Can you actually put something on it? I don't think there's too many HUD houses here in Cordova, so it could be more of a possibility here in town. Advantages, it goes directly into the homeowner's bank. But the benefit might be more psychological. It depends how powerful they are. But work is done on your actual house. And you can see they're putting them on the roof here. Kong was very skeptical of putting these on their roof because that's where they get a lot of their water from, is rainwater, and they didn't want it interfering with that. I have seen some systems where solar is actually hooked up to hot water. So solar used to heat water is one possibility. A picture over in Africa where they have these water jugs. The solar helps heat them up, kills the bacteria, viruses that are in water. You kind of have these wastewater treatment systems here, used in some places in rural Alaska. And then, like I mentioned, Kong doesn't have any running water, so you have these in-home water systems, in-home toilet, running water, and maybe you could hook those up to solar and have it heat the water in these systems. Lightsaber Man. I guess they sell these, so kind of like these at REI. They're not really quite this big, but it's the idea of you could take heat and transform it into light electricity. One idea that I thought might be kind of interesting is chest freezers. You need the chest freezers the most during summer when the sun is out. So why not try to have some chest freezers powered off of solar energy? Stoves, but then those are used mostly in winter. There's issues with that. At the community level, some places do have community freezers. That might be something nice here with commercial fishing, some community freezers hooked up to solar. I mentioned Tanana has solar on their washateria. So that helps out the washateria where people do laundry, get water, because not everyone has running water there. Community refrigerators, and then ownership agreements, so like the solar farms I was showing you before. So these are potential examples of solar at the community level, how that could be used. Greenhouses, Igiugig actually has, I believe, 2 greenhouses. And what's interesting in Igiugig is originally these were started for the nearby commercial or sport fishing lodges. And the person came in there and said that this is wrong. We should be feeding residents of Igiugig first and the sport fishermen second. And so, each week they have harvests and community members come and they buy the stuff from the greenhouse, and then whatever's extra goes to the sport lodges. But they've been able to turn this around and have it in as a business plan. They even have chickens there, and I don't know, they have these little cages where the chickens walk around and poop on the garden and pick weeds and stuff like that. It's like a chicken tractor, I think they call it. So, it's just, Alaskans can be very creative, and they're a very creative community. And they have like some solar too with this garden here. And then here's an example of a smaller garden here, this Northern Greenhouse Research Project with some solar panels on it. People at ASEP are looking into the crop boxes. Anyone heard of the crop boxes? Someone here in town has bought one. I guess it's already here. It arrived this week. Basically, they're Connex boxes that you turn into greenhouses. So I forget the lady's name who got one, but Christy?
Christie.
Yeah. So she got one of these crop boxes and is gonna have hydroponics in it and grow hydroponics within this crop box. We're working with some people in Canada to try and figure out how renewable energy could be fed into these crop boxes. But it was mentioned, you guys get a fair amount of rain here. And so sometimes it's keeping rain out of your garden is what you'd want to do. So maybe the crop boxes are actually a way to go here. So you kind of saw different ways that renewable energy can be used. The first community, I went and asked this question, and they're like, you need to divide it up between summer and winter, because it really influences what I want to do with my renewable energy. So this is, in summer, what would you want to do with your renewable energy? Heat water, make electricity, try to make heat, refrigeration freezers, water reuse systems, greenhouses, or treating water. And we'll start with you this time. On the spot.
In the summer?
In the summer.
Heat water.
Heat water, okay. Greenhouse.
I'd say heat water.
Heat what?
Water.
Heat water, okay.
Heat water.
Heat water. Greenhouse, yep. Difficult?
Yeah.
Something totally different?
I mean, I'm interested in water reuse systems.
Water reuse systems, okay. Did you have a comment?
We've invested very heavily into a water treatment plant, which I think is UV.
Okay.
I don't know what the energy demands of that are,
Uh-huh.
but use solar to help power that system. That might be efficient.
Okay, so a water treatment plant. Okay.
Making electricity.
Making electricity.
Electricity.
Electricity. Okay, back there.
We could use things like, for our community, we're always having a challenge to keep the pool heated. That's a community thing.
Oh, okay.
Also to assist the canneries and the processing plants.
Okay.
Anything we can do to assist that and take the load off of, what the residential need would be a positive.
Okay. I know a lot of communities, one of their big energy hogs is it's a place that equipment has to be on almost all the time, very sensitive equipment.
Hospital?
Yeah, hospital clinics. Yep. So like Igiyagi, they really would like to see any renewable energies be devoted to their clinic because that's one of their biggest energy hogs. So, all right. How about you? Electricity, okay. Electricity.
Treating water or heating water.
Treating water or heating water, okay, 0.5. Yeah,
Making electricity.
okay. Yeah. Electricity. Electricity.
Water reuse.
Water reuse.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouses, okay. All right. Is there anyone, let's see, okay. So now winter.
Greenhouses.
Greenhouses, okay. Yeah,
Water.
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 Wait, which one? Water use or water?
Heating water.
Heating water.
And two. Greenhouse. In winter.
Electricity or heating water.
Okay.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse.
Electricity.
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 Okay.
Yeah, heating water and electricity, especially for like our schools, would be super important. in
Okay.
this time.
You on the end? Yep, you.
Yeah, heating water would be okay.
Okay.
Electricity.
Electricity.
Heating water.
Heating water.
Electricity.
Electricity.
I think it's still electricity.
Still electricity, both of you?
I'd say electricity, yeah.
Okay.
I like the idea of the greenhouses, but it's more like what you get from the greenhouses than like
Yeah.
I feel like the electricity is more of an energy.
Okay. Okay. And then it's
we
like
have the infrastructure to use the electricity, whereas that greenhouses would take a lot more investment.
Yeah, someone kind of pointed out, well, if you can make electricity, you can do a lot of different things.
Yeah, it's like we're already heating our water with electricity.
Mm-hmm, yep,
And our refrigerators and freezers. So.
yep, okay,
Well, I heat my water with diesel, so I'd say heating water.
okay,
I'd say electric, we're already set up with the battery
mm-hmm.
and solar's cheap, so I don't know, I would say electricity.
Yeah.
Yeah, Clay said that with the batteries, it was 84% and 90% was the community was run on hydro in November and December. So it really helped the ability of hydro to feed the demand of the community.
And unfortunately, with global warming, we're gonna probably be able to do better in the winter than we have in the past
Yeah,
with hydro.
okay.
Making heat?
Making heat, all right.
Electricity.
Electricity, okay. Yeah, there's been some talk of trying to look at how global warming, climate change might influence, water availability around Cordova and the influence on fish and hydro, but people are still trying to find funding to do that. So, as we've had this talk, I mentioned that there are some challenges to technology, to rural renewable energy in rural Alaska. And, I'm hearing them during my visits. But I just wanted to give you some information from this conference where it was business people, and business people were had their input as to what is limiting the use of renewable energy by rural Alaskans. And one of the top ones was funding or lack of financing. It seems communities are forever trying to write grants, to get funding to make these systems work. The lack of a workforce, so just like residents are saying, you need trained people, business people are saying you need trained people, so there is some overlap there. Regulations, I just had someone ask me why there aren't more regulations in the state of Alaska to incentivize solar. Probably funding situation in the state of Alaska, but incentivizing it to put on people's houses, that can be a problem because, not everyone owns their houses, and house ownership is different, in rural Alaska than urban Alaska generally. The land access issue in Tanana was something that they struggle with. Also, some people, PCE, I don't know, does that disincentivize people to use their renewable energy or not? That's kind of a debate that's out there. And just education. Just like with the thermal stoves in Kongiganek, education, you got to look at the costs of everything together to see if you're actually benefiting from your renewable energy. Anybody have any comments about these limitations? You guys are lucky. You got a lot of smart people in town and pretty high human capacity here. So it's great to see. So what are the engineers doing back in Anchorage and Fairbanks? So they're trying to use the information that Clay and others are giving us to match up the different peaks of energy to uses of energy. So this is an example of you might each day, once a day, the sun comes out, solar noon, anywhere between noon and 2 p.m. in Alaska. You have a huge dump of energy from the sun, goes away, comes up, comes down. What does that match nicely to? And that might be something that's better suited for heating water because you can dump it into the water, it can sit there, and you can use it when you need it. If I'm using a hairdryer and it's, I'm at the 20, it's not going to power my hairdryer. Not that I use a hairdryer at all, but it's something where you want it right away, And say like wind. Wind might be available at different peaks too. So they're trying to match up the peaks from renewable energy with the uses that people want, so they can make sure that there's stability in the demand and the inputs and the outputs are matching up. So, bring these ideas back to them and they will do their magical modeling that the engineers do. It has a lot of potential for Alaskans, and, with your help, we can try to develop things that are really wanted by people in rural Alaska. And so we're in year 3 of probably a 5-year project, so they'll keep working on this. I'm trying to save money on this trip so I can come back in a year and present the results from the interviews that I'm doing in town right now and the 3 other communities. So if you haven't heard, we're paying money to do interviews. We're looking to interview 50 households one person per household. The surveys take about half an hour to do, 40 minutes to do, so you'd get like $25 cash, or and yeah, we ask questions about energy, food, water, energy security. What are your thoughts about renewable energies, visions for the future? And it's pretty painless. So anybody, we can have a sign-up sheet in the back if you guys would like to sign up for it, and we can call and come to your house or go to the library, whatever you would like. I'll be here till Thursday, and Barbara will be here till either Friday or Saturday.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.